The Velith had watched Earth for 300 years. They watched from far away, through long-range sensors and hidden probes. They watched the blue planet spin in its little corner of the galaxy. And they felt fear. Earth was a Class 7 death world. The Galactic Council had given it this name because everything about the planet was designed to kill. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was filled with a gas called oxygen that could burn metal over time. The weather changed without warning. Storms tore across the surface. The ground shook and split open. Mountains breathed fire, and the creatures that lived there were nightmares made real. The humans were the worst of all. They had evolved on this terrible world, and it had made them into something the galaxy had never seen before. They were strong in ways that made no sense. They could survive wounds that would kill any other species. They could run for hours without stopping. They could eat plants and animals that were poison to everyone else. They healed from injuries that should have been permanent. And they were smart, so very smart. The Galactic Council had decided long ago that Earth should be left alone. The humans were too dangerous to contact. Too unpredictable, too violent. Let them stay on their death planet, the Council said. Let them fight each other. Let them never learn about the stars. But the Velith were dying, and they had no other choice. Elder Luminara stood in the last standing tower of her city. She was old, even by Velith standards. Her skin glowed with soft blue light, the way all her people did. The Velith were beautiful creatures. They were tall and thin, with large eyes that could see in the dark. They spoke with their minds as much as their mouths. They had never known violence. Their world was a paradise of gentle winds and warm oceans. They had evolved without predators, without danger, without any need for fighting. This had made them weak. The Keth had come 6 months ago. They came in ships that blocked out the sun. They came with weapons that turned cities to ash. They came with soldiers that moved like insects, clicking and hissing as they killed everything in their path. The Keth were conquerors. They had destroyed 100 worlds before this one. They took what they wanted and killed the rest. Luminara watched through the window as another Velith city burned in the distance. The screams of her people echoed in her mind. Millions were dead. Millions more were in Keth harvesting facilities, being drained of their life force to feed the hive. Her children were gone. Her friends were gone. Everything she had ever loved was gone. She turned to the ancient communication device in the center of the room. It was old technology, built before the Council had forbidden contact with Earth. It could send a message across the stars to the very edge of human space. Her advisors had begged her not to use it. The humans are monsters, they said. They will come and they will destroy us just like the Keth. They are worse than the Keth. At least the Keth have a reason for killing. The humans kill because they enjoy it. But Luminara did not care anymore. Her people were dying. The Council had refused to help. The other species of the galaxy had turned away, too afraid of the Keth to intervene. If she had to choose between certain death and a chance at survival, she would take the chance. She placed her hand on the device and spoke. This is Elder Luminara of the Velith Collective. We are dying. The Keth Dominion has invaded our world. They are killing our children. They are destroying our cities. We have nowhere else to turn. We beg anyone who hears this message to help us. Please, we will give anything. We will do anything. Just help us survive. She sent the message on the old human frequencies, and then she waited. 3 weeks later, on the edge of human space, a small patrol ship called the Guanghua picked up the signal. Lieutenant Dohun was on duty when the message came through. He was a young man with sharp eyes and a calm voice. He had joined the United Terran Coalition Navy because his father had served and his grandfather before him. He had never seen real combat. None of them had. Humanity had been alone in their corner of the galaxy for 200 years. Do-hoon listened to the message 3 times. He heard the fear in the alien voice. He heard the desperation. He heard children crying in the background. Something cold settled in his chest. He forwarded the message to Fleet Command without saying a word. 12 hours later, Admiral Sujin stood before the Coalition War Council on Earth. She was a small woman with gray hair and eyes like winter ice. She had commanded the Terran fleet for 15 years, and in all that time she had never fired a shot in anger. Humanity's wars were behind them now. They had united as a species and turned their eyes to the stars, only to find that the stars wanted nothing to do with them. She played the recording for the council. The room fell silent. They listened to Elder Luminara beg for help. They heard the explosions in the background. They heard the screaming. When it was over, no one spoke for a long time. "They called us monsters," one counselor finally said. "They left us alone because they were afraid of us. And now they want our help?" Admiral Sujin looked at him. Her face showed nothing. "Yes," she said. "They did call us monsters. They did leave us alone. And yes, they are asking for our help. Why should we give it?" Sujin turned to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean. Earth was beautiful from up here. Dangerous and beautiful, just like the creatures who lived on it. "Because they asked," she said simply. "Because they are dying and they have no one else. Because we can help them. And that means we should." She turned back to the council. Her eyes were hard now. "They called us monsters. Fine. Let us show them what kind of monsters we are. Let us show them that when someone calls for help, we answer. Let us show them that the most dangerous species in the galaxy is also the most loyal." The vote was unanimous. 2 days later, the first Terran warships began to wake from their long sleep. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, engines that had been silent for a century roared back to life. Crews were assembled, weapons were loaded, orders were given, the Deathworlders were going to war, and the galaxy would never be the same. The ships had been sleeping for 150 years. They rested beneath the ice of Antarctica, buried deep in frozen tunnels that stretched for kilometers. They were the weapons of the last war, the final conflict that had united humanity against itself. When peace came, the leaders of Earth had decided to hide these terrible machines away. They were too dangerous to destroy, but too frightening to keep in the open. Now, they woke. Commander Minho stood on the observation deck as the great ship Baeko rose from its icy grave. The vessel was enormous. It stretched for nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, covered in armor plating that could withstand direct nuclear strikes. Its weapon systems could crack moons. Its engines could push it to speeds that would tear lesser ships apart. Minho had trained his whole life for this moment. He came from a military family. His mother had been a general. His father had been a starship captain. He had entered the academy at 18 and graduated at the top of his class. But he had never seen war. None of them had. Humanity had been at peace for so long that war seemed like a story from ancient history. That was about to change. Around him, other ships were rising from the ice. The Cheongryong, a carrier that held 500 fighter craft. The Jujak, a battleship designed for close combat. The Hyunmu, a stealth destroyer that could move through space without being detected. Dozens of cruisers, frigates, and support vessels followed. The entire Antarctic fleet was waking up, and it was beautiful in a terrible way. Minho's communicator beeped. It was Admiral Sujin. "Commander!" Her voice crackled through the device. "Status report. Beko is at 80% power, Admiral. Weapon systems are online. Crew is boarding now. We will be ready to launch in 48 hours. "Make it 36, Sujin replied. "The Velith do not have time to wait." On the other side of the planet, in a research facility orbiting Mars, Dr. Hana was preparing a different kind of weapon. She was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life. For 20 years, she had worked with the small amount of data humanity had gathered about the other species of the galaxy. Now she was being asked to use that knowledge for war. She stood before a holographic display showing two alien species. On the left were the Velith. They were elegant creatures, tall and thin, with skin that glowed like moonlight. Their biology was simple and beautiful. They had evolved on a world with low gravity and no predators. They were peaceful because they had never needed to be anything else. On the right were the Keth. They were nightmares given form. Their bodies were covered in hard shells like insects. They had too many limbs and too many eyes. Their mouths were filled with sharp teeth, designed for tearing flesh. They communicated through chemical signals and shared a hive mind that connected every member of their species to a central queen. Hana had studied the Keth for years. She knew their strengths and their weaknesses. She knew that they had conquered 100 worlds and destroyed a dozen species. She knew that they considered themselves the ultimate form of life in the galaxy. She also knew that they had never fought humans. Captain Junho entered the room. He was a Marine, the commander of the assault carrier Haidong. He was not a large man, but there was something about him that made people step back. He moved like a predator, always aware of his surroundings, always ready for violence. "Doctor," he said, "the Admiral wants a briefing for all command staff. Can you tell us how to kill these things?" Hana smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Captain, I can do better than that. I can tell you why they are going to lose." 1 hour later, Hana stood before the assembled commanders of the Terran fleet. Admirals, captains, generals, and colonels filled the room. They were the best humanity had to offer, men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting their species. Hana began her presentation. "The Keth are conquerors," she said. "They have been expanding across the galaxy for 10,000 years. They consume weaker species to fuel their growth. They are strong, they are organized, and they are ruthless." She paused. "They have never lost a war. They have never faced a species that could match them in combat. They believe they are invincible." She changed the display to show a comparison of Keth and human biology. The average Keth soldier can lift approximately 50 kilograms. The average human soldier can lift 120. Keth soldiers can run at speeds of 15 kilometers per hour. Human soldiers can sprint at 40. Keth cannot survive temperatures below 10 degrees or above 40 degrees. Humans can survive in conditions ranging from -40 to +50. The room was silent. "The Keth evolved on a paradise world," Hana continued. "Low gravity, stable climate, abundant food. They never faced predators. They never experienced natural disasters. They never had to struggle to survive." She looked around the room. "We did. Every single adaptation that makes us human exists because Earth tried to kill us and we refused to die. We are stronger because our gravity demanded it. We are faster because predators chased us. We can survive wounds that would kill the Keth 10 times over because our ancestors could not afford to stop fighting." Captain Junho leaned forward. "So what you are saying is—" "What I am saying, Captain, is that the Keth think they are apex predators. They have never met a species from a death world. They have no idea what a real predator looks like." Hana smiled again, and this time it reached her eyes. "They are about to find out." The fleet launched 3 days later. 200 warships carrying 50,000 soldiers jumped to faster-than-light speed and vanished from human space. They moved through the void between stars, crossing distances that would take normal ships years to travel. On the bridge of the Baeko, Admiral Sujin watched the stars blur past. She thought about the message from Elder Luminara. She thought about the dying children and the burning cities. She thought about all the species who had called humanity monsters and refused to have anything to do with them. Those species had been right about one thing. Humanity was dangerous. They were violent and unpredictable and capable of terrible things, but they were also loyal. They remembered their friends and they never forgot their enemies. They would walk through fire for the people they cared about and burn down empires for those who hurt them. Sujin opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All hands," she said. "This is the Admiral. In 12 hours, we will arrive at Velith Prime. We will find a world under attack by enemies who think they are unstoppable. We will show them how wrong they are." She paused. "The galaxy called us monsters. Today, we prove them right. But we will be the kind of monsters that defend the weak and punish the cruel. We will be the nightmare that the nightmares fear." She took a breath. "All hands, prepare for combat. We have a war to win." The fleet roared its approval, and the ships raced toward battle. The Terran fleet dropped out of faster-than-light speed above Velith Prime, and what they saw made even the hardest soldiers go quiet. The planet below was burning. Great black scars covered the surface where cities had once stood. Smoke rose from 100 different locations, creating dark clouds that spread across the atmosphere. In orbit, thousands of small ships drifted without power. They were refugee vessels, filled with Velith who had tried to escape. Now they were just tombs, floating in the darkness, and among them, like wolves among sheep, moved the Keth warships. There were 40 of them. Each one was massive, covered in sharp angles and dark metal. They circled the planet slowly, sending down transport ships to collect survivors. The transports would bring the Velith to the harvesting facilities, where they would be drained of their life force to feed the hive. Lieutenant Commander Yunji sat in the cockpit of her fighter, watching the scene through her display. She was the leader of Wolf Squadron, the best pilots in the Terran fleet. She had flown in simulators for years, training for a battle that she never thought would come. Now it was here, and she felt something cold and sharp in her chest. It was not fear. It was anger. "All squadrons," Admiral Sujin's voice came through the comm. "Hold position. I am going to try diplomacy first." The fleet waited. 200 warships hung in the void, their weapons powered but not yet aimed. On the bridge of the Baeko, Admiral Sujin opened a channel to the Keth fleet. "This is Admiral Sujin of the United Terran Coalition. You are attacking a species under our protection. Withdraw immediately or we will use force." For a long moment, there was silence. Then a new voice came through the channel. It was harsh and clicking, like insects rubbing their legs together. "I am Hive Admiral Vorath of the Keth Dominion. I do not recognize your authority. I do not fear your tiny ships. You will leave this system or you will be destroyed. This is the only warning you will receive." Sujin's eyes did not change. "Very well," she said. "You have made your choice." She closed the channel and turned to her tactical officer. "All ships, weapons free, destroy them." The battle began. Lieutenant Commander Yunji was the first to engage. Her squadron of 12 fighters screamed through space toward the nearest Keth interceptors. The enemy ships were fast, but they moved in predictable patterns. Their pilots were good, but they had never faced opponents who could think faster and react quicker than any species they had ever encountered. Yunji pulled her fighter into a 12G turn. The force pressed her into her seat like a giant hand. Her vision blurred at the edges, but she did not black out. Human pilots could survive forces that would kill most galactic species. It was one of the many gifts of evolving on a death world. She locked onto a Keth interceptor and fired. The enemy ship exploded in a ball of flame. She was already moving to her next target before the debris stopped spinning. "Wolf 2, on your 6, she called to her wingman. "I see him," Pilot Nari replied. Her voice was calm, almost bored. She rolled her fighter and fired backward, destroying the enemy that had been chasing her without even looking. In the span of 15 minutes, Wolf Squadron destroyed 32 Keth interceptors. They did not lose a single pilot. On the surface of Velith Prime, Captain Junho watched the sky light up with explosions. His Marines had landed in the ruins of the capital city, dropping from assault shuttles into streets filled with smoke and death. They moved fast, faster than any Keth could match. The enemy did not understand what was happening. They had expected easy prey. Instead, they found monsters in human form. Sergeant Wu Jin led his squad through the broken streets. He was a big man with a scar across his face from a training accident years ago. He carried a heavy rifle that most galactic species could not even lift. Behind him, 8 soldiers followed, each one trained to kill in a dozen different ways. They found the harvesting facility at the center of the city. It was a Keth structure, all black metal and strange angles. From inside came the sounds of Velith screaming. "Stack up," Wu Jin ordered. His soldiers took positions by the door. "Breach on my mark." He kicked the door open and went in shooting. The inside of the facility was a nightmare. Velith civilians hung in pods along the walls, tubes connected to their bodies, draining them of everything they had. Keth workers moved between the pods, checking readings and adjusting controls. They looked up when Wu Jin entered, surprised that anyone would dare interrupt their work. They stopped being surprised very quickly. Wu Jin's squad moved through the facility like a storm. The Keth tried to fight back, but they were too slow, too weak. Their weapons could not penetrate Terran armor. Their soldiers could not match Terran speed. One by one, they fell. In less than 10 minutes, the facility was clear. Every Keth inside was dead. Wu Jin stood in the middle of the carnage, breathing hard, his armor covered in alien blood. "Medics!" he called through his comm. "Get in here! We have survivors!" Lieutenant Yuna was the first medic to arrive. She was a small woman with kind eyes and steady hands. She had joined the military to help people, not to hurt them. But today she had done both. She moved between the pods, freeing the Velith survivors, checking their vital signs, stabilizing those who were in critical condition. Some of them looked at her with fear. They had never seen a human before. They had heard stories about how dangerous these creatures were. But Yuna was gentle. She spoke softly, even though they could not understand her words. She held their hands and wiped their tears and promised them that everything would be okay. One young Velith, barely more than a child, grabbed her arm. His skin glowed faintly with the light of his people. "Why?" he asked in broken standard language. "Why help us?" Yuna smiled at him. "Because you needed help," she said. "And we were able to give it. That is all the reason we need." In orbit, the battle was ending. The Keth fleet had been designed to fight species that were weaker than them. They had never faced opponents who could match them, let alone surpass them. 6 of their dreadnoughts were now debris fields spreading across space. The survivors were running. Hive Admiral Vorath watched his fleet die around him. He did not understand. These small ships, with their soft-bodied crews, should have been easy prey. Instead, they moved with a speed and precision that his tactical systems could not predict. They took damage that should have destroyed them and kept fighting. They did things that were impossible. His ship shook as another Terran attack struck home. Warning lights flashed across his bridge. His crew clicked in panic around him. "Retreat!" he ordered. "All ships, retreat to the edge of the system. We must warn the Hive Queen." The surviving Keth ships turned and ran, jumping to faster than light as soon as they could. They left behind the wreckage of their fleet and the bodies of their soldiers. The first battle was over. Humanity had won. On the surface of Velith Prime, Elder Luminara emerged from her shelter. She walked through streets that had been battlegrounds just hours before. Terran soldiers were everywhere now, helping her people, treating their wounds, sharing their food and water. She had called for monsters. She had expected death in a different form. Instead, she found something she had never expected. She found friends. Admiral Sujin's shuttle landed nearby, and the Admiral walked out to meet her. The two women stood face to face, one ancient and glowing, one gray-haired and scarred. "You came," Luminara said. Her voice shook with emotion. "We called and you came," Sujin nodded. "We heard you," she said simply. "We could not ignore you." Luminara felt tears forming in her large eyes. "The galaxy was right about you," she said. "You are terrifying. But they were also wrong. You are kind." Sujin looked at the soldiers helping the Velith survivors. She looked at the medics treating alien wounds. She looked at the pilots flying patrol overhead to keep everyone safe. "We are both," she said. "That is what makes us human." The news of the defeat at Velith Prime spread through the Keth Dominion like fire through dry grass. Hive Admiral Vorath had returned with only 12 ships out of 40. He had lost more soldiers in a single day than the Dominion had lost in a century of conquest. Hive Queen Syraxis received the report in her throne chamber on the world of Karath. She was ancient, older than most stars in her territory. She had ruled the Dominion for 8,000 years, guiding her people to victory after victory. She had consumed 100 species and conquered a dozen star systems. She had never known failure, until now. "Show me," she commanded. Vorath played the recordings from the battle. Syraxis watched as human ships tore through her fleet like wind through dead leaves. She watched as human soldiers moved faster than any species she had ever seen. She watched as her warriors, the pride of the Dominion, were slaughtered like animals. For the first time in her long life, Syraxis felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it: fear. But fear turned quickly to rage. She had not built the greatest empire in galactic history by running from challenges. These humans had embarrassed her. They had killed her children. They would pay. "Mobilize everything," she ordered. "Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We will crush these creatures and burn their homeworld to ash." The Keth Dominion began to move. 800 warships gathered from across their territory. 1 billion soldiers were prepared for deployment. Planet-killing weapons were removed from storage for the first time in 1,000 years. Meanwhile, intelligence officer Ji-Won sat at her station on the Baiko, watching the enemy communications. She was young, only 24 years old, but she had a gift for finding patterns in chaos. She had spent 3 days without sleep, monitoring every Keth signal she could intercept. What she found made her blood run cold. She rushed to Admiral Sujin's quarters and requested an emergency meeting. "Admiral," Ji-Won said, spreading data across the holographic display. "The Keth have tracked our jump trajectory. They have calculated the location of Earth." Sujin's face did not change, but her hands tightened on the edge of the table. "They are not just preparing a counterattack against us here," Ji-Won continued. "They are planning to attack our homeworld directly. If we stay to defend Velith Prime, Earth will be unprotected." The room fell silent. It was the nightmare scenario, the one thing they had hoped to avoid. The Keth had learned where humanity lived, and they were coming to destroy them all. Sujin stood at the window, looking out at the stars. She thought about Earth. She thought about the billions of people who had no idea what was coming. She thought about her home, the blue planet she had spent her whole life protecting. Then she thought about the Velith. She thought about Elder Luminara and the children they had saved from the harvesting facilities. She thought about the promise she had made when she answered their call for help. "No," she said finally. Ji-Won blinked. "Admiral?" Sujin turned to face her. "We do not run home to hide behind our walls. We do not wait for the enemy to come to us. That is not how we fight." She activated the ship-wide communication system. "All command staff, report to the war room immediately. We are changing our strategy." 1 hour later, the senior officers of the Terran fleet gathered around the planning table. Sujin stood at the head, her eyes moving across the faces of her captains and commanders. "The Keth are preparing to attack Earth," she said. They believe we will retreat to defend our homeworld. They expect us to be afraid." She smiled, and there was something dangerous in it. "They are wrong. We are not going to defend. We are going to attack. We are going to take this war straight to their heart." She activated the tactical display. A map of Keth space appeared, showing their territory, their planets, their military installations. The Keth Dominion has 12 core worlds. Their industrial base, their shipyards, their population centers are all concentrated in these systems. If we hit them hard enough, fast enough, they will have to recall their fleets to defend themselves. Commander Minho leaned forward. "You want us to invade the Dominion?" "I want us to end this war," Sujin replied. "Not in a year, not in a decade, now. We have the element of surprise. The Keth do not know what we are capable of. They have never fought a species from a death world. By the time they understand what they are facing, it will be too late." Captain Junho crossed his arms. "What about Velith Prime? If we leave, the Keth could return. Commander Minho will stay with a defensive force. 30 ships, 10,000 soldiers. Enough to hold the line until we finish this." She looked around the room. "The rest of us are going to war." The Terran fleet split in two. Commander Minho remained at Velith Prime with his defensive group, setting up orbital defenses and ground installations. The main battle force, 170 ships carrying 40,000 soldiers, jumped toward Keth space. What followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Terran fleet moved through Keth territory like a blade through flesh. They struck shipyards and destroyed them before the defenders could respond. They attacked supply lines and cut the Dominion's logistics to pieces. They raided military bases and killed thousands of enemy soldiers. The Keth could not stop them. Their ships were designed to fight species that moved slowly and attacked predictably. The humans did neither. They appeared from nowhere, hit hard, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Their pilots flew in ways that Keth tactical computers could not predict. Their soldiers fought in environments that would kill any normal species. On the Keth industrial world of Vestron, Captain Junho led a boarding action against an orbital shipyard. His Marines breached the hull and fought through corridors that had lost power and atmosphere. The Keth inside died from the cold and the vacuum. The humans barely noticed. Lieutenant Yuna was there, moving behind the combat teams, treating wounds that would have killed anyone else. She watched as Sergeant Wu Jin took a blade through his shoulder and kept fighting. She watched as soldiers with broken bones and burned skin refused to stop until the mission was complete. "How do you do it?" she asked Wu Jin later, as she patched his wound. "How do you keep going when you should be dead?" Wu Jin looked at her with tired eyes. "Because stopping means losing," he said, "and we do not lose." On the Keth colony world of Tertian, Pilot Nari flew cover for ground forces as they evacuated enslaved aliens from a harvesting facility. Her fighter took a direct hit from a defense platform, tearing off one of her wings. Any other pilot would have died. Any other ship would have crashed. Nari brought her crippled fighter down in a controlled landing, climbed out of the burning wreckage, and continued fighting on foot until extraction arrived. "I thought you were dead," Yunji said when she saw Nari walking onto the rescue shuttle. Nari shrugged. "I got better." Back on Earth, people watched the news feeds with a mixture of pride and terror. Their sons and daughters were fighting across the stars, taking the war to an enemy that had threatened their very existence. They were winning, but the cost was measured in blood. Dr. Hana worked without sleep, developing new weapons and countermeasures based on data from the battlefield. She created drugs that enhanced human endurance even further. She designed armor that could withstand Keth bioweapons. She found weaknesses in Keth physiology that could be exploited. "We are not just fighting a war," she told her team. "We are proving something. We are proving that the galaxy was wrong about us. We are not monsters to be feared. We are protectors to be respected." In her throne room on Karath, Hive Queen Syraxis watched her empire crumble. The humans were everywhere now. Her fleets were being destroyed piecemeal, her planets were under attack, her soldiers were dying by the millions. She had thought the humans would run. She had thought they would hide. Instead, they had come for her, and they would not stop until they had destroyed everything she had built. For the first time in 8,000 years, Syraxis understood what it felt like to be prey. Admiral Sujin looked at the tactical display showing the Keth throne world. They had fought for 3 months. They had lost ships and soldiers. They had paid in blood for every victory. But they had won. "All forces," she announced, "converge on Karath. It is time to end this." The final battle was coming. The Terran fleet dropped out of faster-than-light speed above Karath, the throne world of the Keth Dominion. Below them spread a planet of dark metal and burning factories, home to billions of the enemy. In orbit hung the last hope of the Dominion. 300 warships gathered to make a final stand. Admiral Sujin stood on the bridge of the Baeko and looked at the enemy fleet. They had fought across a dozen star systems to reach this point. They had bled and died and watched friends fall. Now it would end, one way or another. She opened a channel to the Keth flagship. "This is Admiral Sujin of the United Terran Coalition. I am offering terms. Surrender unconditionally. Release all enslaved species. Withdraw from all conquered territories. In exchange, we will allow your people to survive." She waited. The stars seemed to hold their breath. Then came the reply. It was Hive Queen Syraxis herself, her voice clicking and hissing through the translator. "You dare? You pathetic creatures dare to offer me terms? I have ruled this galaxy for 8,000 years. I have consumed species older than your entire civilization. I will not bow to monsters who crawled out of the dirt on a death planet." Sujin's expression did not change. "Then you have chosen death." "I have chosen to destroy you," Syraxis replied. "All ships, attack. Kill every last one of them." The Battle of Karath began. 300 Keth warships surged forward. They were the best the Dominion had left. Crewed by veterans and armed with the most powerful weapons their technology could create. They outnumbered the Terran fleet almost 2-1. It did not matter. Lieutenant Commander Yunji led the fighter squadrons into the heart of the enemy formation. Her pilots flew like they were born in the void, twisting and spinning through patterns that no other species could match. Keth interceptors fell by the dozens, unable to keep up with opponents who could survive forces that would crush them into paste. Pilot Nari was at Yunji's wing, her fighter repaired and ready for battle. She had nearly died a dozen times in this war. Each time she had survived. Each time she had come back stronger. "Wolf 3, you have 2 on your tail," she called to one of her squadron. "I see them," the pilot replied. His voice was calm, almost bored. He pulled a maneuver that would have killed any Keth pilot, looping backward and firing as the enemy ships tried to follow. Both exploded. "Thanks for the heads up." On the Baeko, Captain Junho watched the battle unfold and prepared for the next phase. His Marines were loading into assault shuttles, ready for the most dangerous mission of the war, a direct assault on the Keth flagship Eternal Dominion, where Hive Queen Syraxis waited. "Captain," one of his lieutenants said, "the enemy flagship has the heaviest armor in their fleet. Their security forces number in the thousands. This is going to be hard." Junho checked his weapons. "Hard is what we do." The assault began 20 minutes into the battle. While the main fleet engaged the enemy ships, Junho's Marines launched toward the Eternal Dominion under cover of concentrated fire. Defense platforms tried to shoot them down. Interceptors swarmed around them. But the assault shuttles pushed through, their pilots flying with skill that seemed almost supernatural. They breached the hull of the flagship at 3 different points. Junho led the main force, pushing into the heart of the ship while secondary teams secured key systems. The corridors were dark and twisted. designed for Keth bodies that moved differently than humans. Environmental systems failed around them. The atmosphere became toxic. The gravity fluctuated wildly. The Keth died. The humans adapted. Sergeant Wu Jin was at the front of the advance, his heavy rifle cutting through enemy soldiers like a scythe through wheat. He had been fighting for 3 months without rest. He had wounds that would have killed 10 normal soldiers. He did not stop. Behind him came Lieutenant Yuna, her medical kit ready, her sidearm in her hand. She was a healer first, but this war had taught her to be a warrior as well. She shot a Keth that tried to ambush them from behind, then moved to treat a wounded Marine without breaking stride. They reached the throne chamber after 2 hours of fighting. The doors were massive, made of metal that could withstand starship weapons. Wu Jin looked at them and smiled. "Breach charge," he ordered. The explosion tore the doors apart. Junho led the way inside. The throne chamber was enormous, a cathedral of dark metal filled with the elite guards of the Hive Queen. There were hundreds of them, the best warriors the Dominion had ever produced. They stood between the humans and their queen. They lasted 4 minutes. Junho walked through the carnage, stepping over the bodies of fallen guards. His armor was cracked in a dozen places. He bled from wounds he had stopped noticing hours ago. But he was still standing, still moving, still fighting. Hive Queen Syraxis rose from her throne. She was larger than any Keth he had seen, her body covered in armor that had been grown over thousands of years. Her eyes burned with hatred and something else. Fear. "What are you?" she demanded. "What kind of creatures come from a world that hates them? What kind of species refuses to die?" Junho stopped a few meters from her. He was breathing hard. His body screamed for rest. But he would not stop. Not now, not ever. "We are human," he said. "We come from Earth. And you made a mistake when you threatened our friends." Syraxis attacked. She was fast for her size. Faster than anything Junho had faced before. Her claws tore through the air where his head had been a moment earlier. Her tail swept toward his legs, trying to knock him down. But Junho had been fighting his whole life. He had trained in martial arts since he was a child. He had faced predators and soldiers and things that should not exist. He moved like water around her attacks, striking whenever he found an opening. The fight lasted 4 minutes. In the end, Syraxis lay broken on the floor of her throne chamber, her armor cracked, her limbs shattered. Junho stood over her, bleeding from a dozen wounds, barely able to stay upright. He activated his communicator. "Admiral," he said, "the Queen is down. War is over." The surviving Keth ships surrendered within the hour. Without their queen, the hive mind that connected them fractured and fell apart. They were still dangerous, still capable of fighting, but the will to continue had left them. In the days that followed, Terran ships spread across former Dominion space. They liberated worlds that had been enslaved for centuries. They freed species that had given up hope of rescue. They brought food and medicine and protection to people who had known only fear. 1 month later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 100 species gathered to discuss what had happened. The Keth Dominion had fallen. The humans, the monsters they had feared for so long, had done what no one else could do. Elder Luminara stood before the assembly. Her people had been saved. Her world was healing. And she owed it all to creatures the galaxy had called monsters. "You called them dangerous," she said. "You called them violent. You called them animals from a death planet. You left them alone because you were afraid of what they might do." She looked around the room. Many species could not meet her eyes. "When the Keth attacked my world, we called for help. The council refused. Our neighbors refused. Everyone refused. They were too afraid." She pointed toward the gallery where Admiral Sujin sat with her surviving officers. Junho was there, still recovering from his wounds. Yunji and Nari sat together, their flight suits replaced by dress uniforms. Wujin stood at attention, his scars visible for all to see. "They answered," Luminara said. "They came across the stars to save a species they had never met. They bled for us. They died for us. They walked into the darkness so we would not have to face it alone." She turned back to the council. "You called them monsters. Perhaps you were right. But they are the kind of monsters who protect the weak. They are the kind of monsters who punish the cruel. They are the kind of monsters who answer when someone cries for help." She bowed her head. "If that is what monsters are, then we should all wish to be monsters." Admiral Sujin rose from her seat and walked to the floor of the assembly. She looked older than she had before the war. The weight of command had aged her, but her eyes were still sharp, still strong. "We did not come here to be thanked," she said. "We came because it was right. We came because we could help, and that meant we should. We ask for nothing in return." She looked around the room. "But know this. The galaxy called us monsters, and we accepted that name. We will continue to accept it. We will be the monsters that stand between the innocent and those who would hurt them. We will be the nightmare that the nightmares fear." She smiled, and there was something ancient in it, something that went back to the days when humanity's ancestors had fought predators with rocks and bare hands. "The Deathworlders have awakened, and we will never sleep again." The assembly was silent for a long moment. Then slowly the applause began. It started with the Valith, then spread to other species, then filled the entire chamber. They were clapping for the humans, for the monsters who had saved them. Admiral Sujin looked at her officers. She looked at Junho and Yunji and Wujin and all the others who had fought and bled for this moment. She thought about those who had not survived, the soldiers who had given their lives so that others could live. They had called humanity monsters. They had been right, but they had also been wrong. Humanity was monstrous in their strength, their resilience, their refusal to give up. But they were also monstrous in their loyalty, their compassion, their willingness to sacrifice everything for those who needed them. The galaxy had awakened the Deathworlders. Now they would learn what that truly meant. Not destruction, not conquest, not fear, protection, friendship, hope. The humans had come to the stars, and they would never leave. They would be there whenever someone called for help. They would answer whenever someone needed saving. They would fight whenever the innocent were threatened, because that was what monsters did. The right kind of monsters.